The monthly active user number for this activation from Grey Goose for the US Open in Decentraland was 562. I say again, who is this for?
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS of the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. All right, this week we have the honor of having James Whatley join us. James is the Chief Strategy Officer at Diva Agency. And James, you describe your career as having three main phases that really shaped it, from working as the head of social at Spinvox, embracing all things digital at Ogilvy, to where you are today as the CSO at Diva Agency. And one LinkedIn recommendation describes you as part Batman. He knows what good is, and he's prepared to fight for it. So James / the marketing world's Batman, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm great. I must have just approved that LinkedIn without even looking at it. I don't remember that at all, but I love it and it's bang on. I'll take that. Thank you for having me.
Dubose, does that make you Robin, Penguin, Joker? Where do you fit into this cast of characters?
It's not Batman. Like, at the end of the day, that's Superman, right? Like, Superman fights for what's right. Batman kind of strikes fear into the hearts of his enemies. I want that.
They
one.
all kind of
That's
they
the
all
LinkedIn
fight for
recommendation
what's right. Right? Okay.
Oh, really? Like, Batman has parent issues that then caused him to go beat up robbers.
Batman
I'm
has
taking
class solidarity with the rich. Thumbs down on Batman.
That is true. It's not really a good cultural time for Batman, is it? After the 1%, you don't want your superheroes there.
All right, listen, I will give Dubose 1,000 points if he can get somebody to write a Superman recommendation on his LinkedIn by the time this episode is over. Producer Hannah, keep an eye on that. If it happens, let me know, and that'll be 1,000 points for Dubose. Jenna, do you think that's fair, not fair? And how are you doing today?
I think that's fair. I think that if he were like the Superman, like power of our yellow sun, that's worth 1,000 points. I feel like that's fair. I'm okay. I've got the Rona, but it's not too bad. I've had how many shots are we on now? Have I had 12, 13?
Like 6.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little tired.
Good. All right. Well, we'll get through this quickly. All right. So we are switching things up slightly, starting with this week's episode. So instead of me picking the articles for the week, we had each guest pick their article that they're particularly passionate about. So we will go around. Everybody will get to comment on everybody's story, but hopefully this will make it a little bit more spicy in terms of some hot takes on this week and this month's marketing news. So if you've been here before, actually, if you haven't been here before, just a quick recap. So we're going to go around the horn, let every guest comment on their story and each other's, have a bit of discussion on it. There's going to be a 1-minute clock for each person's kind of position on the article, and then a 3-minute discussion. I will award points that really don't matter at all, and I completely make it up as I go along, but that's the power of being the host. And at the end, whoever has the most points gets to have a 2-minute rant or rave on something that they are particularly passionate about, and it can be anything. So starting with story number 1 from James, Grey Goose enters the metaverse with virtual US Open Lounge in Decentraland. This is from Forbes.com. So a quick overview. Each year, the most exclusive and coveted tickets at the US Open is access to the Grey Goose VIP Lounge. Earlier this year, anyone could access the Grey Goose VIP Lounge via the metaverse. Dubose, are we doing the metaverse swear jar? I think we should actually make that a thing, maybe on this show or just like for Rival in general. So that's $1 in the metaverse swear jar. Simply by joining via laptop, the VIP suite was recreated in Decentraland. This is the brand's first ever metaverse activation, and it ran all the way through the tournament that ended on the 12th of September. James, the floor is yours. 1 minute on the clock to tell us your point of view on this article.
Who is this for? Right? I looked at this and I went, okay, first and foremost, I've got Decentraland being described as the metaverse. Decentraland is not the metaverse. Decentraland is a desolate wasteland that you can only get to via your laptop. It's not even mobile friendly. We spent decades telling clients, be mobile first. You can't even access Decentraland from your phone. That's insane. And then game, set, match in the metaverse. It's not the metaverse. And when I say who's it for, this was about 3 weeks ago that this got announced. And the great thing about Decentraland is that there is a bit of code that comes out of it that tells you how many people are there at any one time. So you can go to a website like DAP Radar and go, oh, I wonder what the 30-day DAU or the 30-day number was, the MAU, what was the monthly active user number? The monthly active user number for this activation from Grey Goose for the US Open in Decentraland was 562. I say again, who is this for?
Love it. With 8 seconds to spare. All right. My quick answer, I know I'm kind of breaking my own rules here, but I make up the rules, so I get to break them. It's for the marketers at Grey Goose. It's marketing for the sake of marketing. It's for the headline. That's my quick take, my hot take. I strongly dislike this stuff. I'll put it that way. Dubose, over to you, 1 minute on the clock.
Okay, I would first controversially say it's not even for the marketers at Grey Goose. They're at the actual VIP lounge at one of these events. Otherwise, what's the point? And secondly, I mean, I think, you know, when you look at something like this, I think it's very, very clear to go that this is something for the sake of we can do it, not that we should do it. And I think, yeah, I always find that if you find there's a contest attached to something that's mentioned in the bottom of a press release, you can tell it's kind of had to be strapped together with duct tape and good intentions. And I think the idea here is that you can't even watch the tennis in the VIP lounge. So I guess in a way it is kind of like actual VIP lounges where it's not about the sport anymore. And then I think the other interesting thing is the only reason you would go that is tangentially related to tennis is the idea that you can win tennis tickets for the real life event the next year. And I think, you know, that's the interesting thing for me, that if you were to boil this down, it's a contest with a lot of steps to get into it in a very depressing virtual space. So, you know, shouldn't have been done, could have been done, shouldn't have been done.
Jenna, over to you.
I have relatively little additional to contribute because I agree with James and Dubose, except I will add that I also went in person to the US Open this year. I went in person. I did not go to the Grey Goose Lounge, but I actually did not realize it was my first year. I'd never been. I only went to go see Serena, and I did get to see her. It was fucking incredible, by the way. But I did not know that they did all this, like the stuff like around like the US Open, like actually like in person, like at the tennis event. I did not know about this. And I have lived in New York for 10 years, right? Like, and admittedly, I've never been to I hadn't been to the US Open before, but I just think that really like drives home the point of like, who is this for? Like, I'm definitely like in the group of people that should or like would know that these type of events like happen outside the US Open. But yeah, outside of like people who are in New York or whoever else, like who would be tuning in for this? Like, is this for somebody like in Minnesota who can't actually go to the US Open? I don't know. I don't know who this is for. It's confusing, but I got to go to the US Open and it was really cool. That's my hot take.
Do you get minus points for name dropping? Because I didn't see Serena Williams, so I didn't get any points there.
That sucks. You should have gone to the first round at Arthur Ashe before we got tickets, before it was announced when she was playing, and we got the tickets because we just guessed where she'd be, and we were correct. It was great. I held up one of the little sign thingies.
I took away from the humble brag because you only said Serena. You didn't say Serena Williams, so I thought it was like Serena Smith of Queens.
Oh yeah, you
just
didn't
nice
know.
Person wandered around
on a first name basis.
Who Serena was, the GOAT.
She's on first name terms. Yeah,
Unless
absolutely.
you can call someone and they answer, I don't think you're on first name terms with the person. That's the rule. It has to be.
All right. Yes, negative points for the humble brag, but positive points for showing up sick. 6 points to Jenna, 8 points to you, Dubose, 10 points to you, James. Well done. You are in the lead after round one. Do we have anything else to add for this? And by the way, when I say it's for the marketers, I don't mean they're actually going to this thing. I mean, the reason that they're doing it is because they want to get the headline in the trade press and show their boss and feel better about themselves. I don't think that it actually adds value to the end consumer. Dubose, it's what you always talk about. It's a solution looking for a problem as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, to answer your question quickly, Eric, you did say, is there anything else to add to this? The other thing I wanted to talk about is that this isn't just me dicking on Decentraland, or somebody called it the other day, Decentralalaland. I was like, yes, that's perfect. The Wimbledon also did a similar activation. So tennis, online virtual worlds, but it was in Roblox. And their whole ambition was, we want kids to get into tennis. So therefore, we're going to take tennis and Wimbledon to Roblox where they can come and play. And you could play, and they had influencers doing it. Like, I get it. Yeah, because there's millions of active users there. That makes sense. So it's not just an easy dick on a bad campaign. Other people are doing the similar thing, but in a better way.
Yeah, because they understand where their customers are or their potential customers are, and they understand how they can actually unlock and add more value to them through this technology, through these channels, as opposed to the shiny new toy jump on the bandwagon syndrome that we've seen so much with Web3 and NFT activations by brands. That's just the solution looking for a problem. Hey, what are we doing in Web3? As opposed to actually working backwards from the customer and how they can add value. All right, so it seems like we are all on the same page with Decentralalaland. I think we have the title of our episode. Thank you, James. Moving on to story number 2 from Jenna. Why Wonder Media Network won't sell its podcast ad inventory programmatically. This is from Digiday, and I guess I don't really have to explain it. The article is really in the headline, but some advertisers with podcasts and audio budgets want to reach more listeners efficiently with programmatic advertising rather than invest in expensive custom branded content, but this is not the case for Wonder Media Network. So in the latest episode of Digiday podcast, Sheeta Atkins, the CRO and co-founder of Wonder Media Network, said that she still believes that programmatic is a tragedy, quote, tragedy for the podcasting ecosystem at large. Jenna, what say you?
I agree. I really like this. I really looked at most of this article. I'm not a huge podcast listener myself. I say as I'm on a podcast that we do.
Too
together.
busy hanging out with Serena.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Holding up signs to encourage Serena. Anyways, I'm not a huge podcast listener, but I will say that, like I said, I really enjoyed this POV, like I said, from somebody who's like, you know what, actually, you know, we are into monetization and ad placements in podcasts, but programmatic is terrible. It has been absolutely, like, I think, like, tragic for like a lot of like formats and ads, where it like becomes this incredibly low effort thing where people then make shitty ads and insert them in places that really annoy people and create this really bad experience, where if the point of the podcast is it comes out with better content, and because it's such a crowded space, like, it is actually really requires you to put out quality content to do well, ruining that experience with like shitty ad insertions sucks. And I was really glad to see somebody being like, no, you know what, we're going to, like, you know, protect the quality of our content output, and therefore going to have some quality standards of our ads. And I also just think it's interesting, you know, I was like really worried about centralization for a long time, but I think it's interesting that more and more like networks like this, like podcasts and a couple other things, are really starting to take serious ad dollars away from some of the big, you know, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. So interesting to me, even though I don't really know about podcasts that much.
Yeah, and so a couple of points from the article. So instead of programmatic, they're focused on branded content that they make within their own studio to make bespoke ads, which Atkins says creates memorable ads that listeners are like less likely to skip over. And yeah, she definitely doesn't mince words. She says the concept of efficiency that media planners are asked to find for their brands is often down to laziness. Dubose, 1 minute for your response.
Who will think of the media planners? No, I think, yeah, there is never a more righteous person than someone that's found a way to be righteous and make money at the same time. And I think it's really great that, yeah, let's go to war, not because of a hatred of programmatic, but because our branded content studio needs more things to make. And I think, you know, it's good. Like, you can do good things and make good profit at the same time. That's completely fine. I think there's an interesting thing for me that strikes in this discussion. Like, is programmatic the villain here? Or is shitty marketing in general the villain here, and programmatic is just the envelope currently mailing shitty marketing to people? Because I think the interesting thing is a branded content studio can create really memorable experiences, either very good ones or terrible ones that are etched into your ears forever. It's all down to talent and the brief as well. And I think, you know, the thing here is programmatic does get a bad rap. I don't think it's a great thing in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to creative quality. But I think at the end of the day, the blame lies with the marketers that are using it as a tool and churning out shit, not the distribution method for said shit.
Oh, so you mean it's like those poor media planners that she mentions in this article, that they're like being pressured to do efficient stuff? As a reformed media planner who used to get that pressure all the fucking time, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that really sucks. I really, yeah.
But that's it, right? Like, yeah. Who will think of the media planners? No one, because they're to blame here.
It's not. No, sometimes clients insist on these things. Right? Where it's like they have arbitrary measures of like what your CPM cost has to be, or like all this stuff. It's terrible.
Fuck me, this is boring.
Tough, James.
The programmatic jar is overflowing right now, so we can pour some of that into
Programmatic.
Just because things can be terrible doesn't, and like they're custom, doesn't mean that they're ineffective. Let's recall the head on apply directly to the forehead, head on apply directly to the forehead, head on and apply directly to the forehead. Absolutely terrible, incredibly effective. Yeah.
That is true,
Custom.
but remember our conversations about Monday.com and frequency capping. So.
Oh yeah, that was terrible. That was awful. Monday.
All right, let's hear from James. Besides this being boring, what else you got to say?
I
1
didn't.
minute
I
for
mean,
you.
to be fair to the other guests, I didn't say. I wasn't implying they were fucking boring. I think there is a common theme in all marketing and advertising, trade, social, whatever you want, just to say, well, it has to be this way. It can't be that way. Or it has to be brand building and it can't be driving to sales. It can't just like, these things aren't mutually exclusive. Just be like, okay, we're going to have to do some programmatic. And you know what? We're going to do some branded content. And you know what? We might just get the podcasters to do some stuff as well. The great thing is about programmatic, it's a really fast way for up and coming podcasters to quickly turn that into money. The big names who get their voice recognized and people tune in to listen to them, it makes more sense to do the kind of branded content with them. And of course, they're still going to get served up the extra stuff as well. It's both. We can have both and not be bitches and sit and moan about the other one all the time. It's like, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. It's just Adlanders staring at their belly button going, what can we argue about this time? Bleh, boring.
All right. Love the passion. So, James, I'm going to give you another 10 points. Dubose, I'm going to give you 10 points. Jen, I'm going to give you 7 points. So,
I feel that there's a systematic bias towards points being awarded to the guest on this show, and I'm gonna have Catherine do an actual analysis of this. You just fucking watch. I'm gonna have her do it.
I am very open to learning my unconscious biases. So if she can bring the data, let me know.
I'm saying I don't even think it's
trying
unconscious.
to get better.
I think that I think that there is a finger on the scale. It's fine.
All right, Jenna, you get one extra point. You get one extra point.
That just proves it. That literally just casts more doubt on the system right there. It's not rigged. I'll rig it a little bit more.
Yeah, bring it up with the rival advisory board. Yeah, exactly.
Ombudsman.
The ombudsman who literally does nothing. Okay, so 3 minutes. What else we got to say about this? I think the only thing I would say, like, I hear what you're saying, James, that it can be both. However, I do, I always think about how it's never good to be stuck in the middle, right? If the industry is kind of a little bit clouded, a little bit murky, what's going on, I think it is interesting to kind of like really take a stand in a bit of a white space and have it be as aggressive and sharp as this is. So now, while it might not appeal to everybody, I think for the people for whom branded content, bespoke ads, memorable ads, as she kind of pitching them, for whom that's of interest, Wonder Media Network now kind of stands out. Like, at least for me, I didn't really know how to think about the different podcast networks in terms of the advertising that they were doing. And so it creates a bit of differentiation, I would say, whether that's actually good for them or bad for them, at least it is who they are. And they're claiming to own this space on this side of the spectrum. So that's the only thing that I would add.
You don't get points for sitting on the fence.
Yeah, like there's that. It's the bad boy in a boy band, right? Like at the end of the day, the person who has a defined point of view is going to stand out a little bit further. It's the Mark Wahlbergs of marketing. I think the only thing I'd say is I think to Tim's point, like it's down to the idea this is a channel discussion, right? Like there is a certain point where you go good comms planning, good briefs, a good understanding of what you're putting in the pipes, if we were to use the technical terms for them. They are going to be the things that actually make this work better or, save certain channels that people think are a bit shit. Like I think programmatic, when it democratizes access to more advertising, also lays bare the idea that a lot of people who want to advertise are going to do it in a really terrible way. So I think there's a systematic issue further up the funnel we've got to deal with. And then I think, it shakes out lower down to where it probably won't be as bad.
So systematic issues that we've uncovered today, podcast advertising and the point system on Punchy. Let's see if there's one more that we can get.
I think that the systematic problem is around programmatic advertising, not podcasting advertising specifically. Also, Dubo should get fewer points because his Marky Mark boy band reference is like 10 boy bands ago. Dubose, you need to get like a BTS reference, like in.
There's no bad boy in BTS, is there?
Is there? I don't know.
Dubose knows that any Boston references will automatically get him extra
Marky
points.
Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dubose.
Makes you feel like home.
Let's move on to the last story from Dubose, and this is probably one of the most Dubose articles ever. Abnormal behavior. How Adland's perception of media consumption changed. This is from ThinkBox. So ThinkBox recently released their Ad Nation landmark study, exploring the differences in media consumption and perception between those who work in media and the average person in the UK. The random probability survey conducted by Ipsos took into account over 1,100 people representative of the national population and a survey of 216 media professionals. Dubose, were you part of this survey?
Annoyingly, no. I'd like to be in the next one, though.
We'll have to send them a sternly worded email. Some of the key findings were that media professionals were 104% more likely to be users of Instagram, 106% more likely to be users of Twitter, and 153% more likely to use TikTok than the general UK public. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is interesting and surprising about these findings in this survey. Over to you, Dubose.
Okay, so there's a few things. I think the lovely people at ThinkBox, the best name and best branded of all of the channel advocacy organizations. They do TV advertising. They have a wonderful ad a few years back. Oh gosh, it might be about 10 years now. It's like Marky Mark time, where a dog uses TV advertising to get adopted. If you haven't seen it yet, it's absolutely incredible. But on this thing specifically, I think one of the interesting things is it's not that surprising. But I think it's always worth reminding ourselves that, there is a challenge to understand and accurately mirror and leverage the behavior of consumers in media versus just what we enjoy. I think it's interesting when we were talking about the metaverse earlier, right? Like advertising, massively interested in the metaverse. The normal person is kind of like, that's a thing I heard about once, and I really liked Ready Player One. So I think there is this idea that at a certain point, we always have to remind ourselves we're not most of the time the people we're selling to. And I think this is another great piece that does that. I think there's also the idea that overall, there's always going to be a balance for channel and comms planning on actively targeting where people are now and trying to find open space where you can go in the future. So I think this is interesting because I think a lot of the data and consumption we're seeing reflects that a bit, where people are trying to find opportunities for their clients. Obviously, we get a little more excited about those than buying ads on Ant and Dec's Saturday night takeaway. I think that's still a thing.
James?
I'm unsurprised by the findings. There's been similar research done before. It reminded me when I was reading the story that you shared earlier on of the aspiration window, which was a white paper published by Reach Solutions, and the lead researcher on that was a guy called Andrew Tenzer, and I respect him and the work. And he walked through the work and was like, advertising people and normal people are just like so far apart from each other. And my response to that is strategy. Planners. That's literally, it's my job, and it's all of the planners and strategists I've ever worked with. And I said to him, did you interview any advertising strategists, any advertising planners, any account planners? No, it was all media planners. And I was like, well, you need to go and talk to some creative agencies because they have a whole department dedicated to identifying that gap and making sure that we don't fall in it. And so it makes a whole ton of sense. Of course it does. But there is a whole department in like every ad agency worth its salt deliberately working against it to make sure we don't fall into it.
Bang on time. Well done. Jenna? Thoughts from you?
Media planners are taking it in the shorts on this episode, you guys. Like, this is like a tough day to be a media planner with a bunch of strategists who have always hated media planners, but I guess, I don't know, it's fine, whatever. I would also like to call attention to so that like you quoted the usage statistics. However, further on in this article, it does say the media professionals' estimates of the penetration of some social media apps were within a 10 percentage point margin of the percentage reported of use by the UK public. So this seems to be that even though our consumption and usage habits are different, media planners, because that's who I assume media professionals are, that have been surveyed, are actually pretty decent, again, at doing exactly what James said, the strategy level of this and saying, actually, who are we talking to and what makes sense for us to put in front of these people. I don't know. Yeah, otherwise the story doesn't really seem all that much to me. Like, oh, is it that middle class white collar professionals tend to in their late 20s and mid 30s tend to use social media more than the rest of the UK public? Wow, that's like really shocking. I'm really shocked. I'm surprised. Although I'm not on TikTok, and I'll never be on TikTok.
3 minutes on the clock. What else? Builds, comments, additional thoughts.
So one thing I did find that was really funny is when they're like advertising people use TikTok more than the general population. And I think that's because the average age of people in advertising is much more aligned to the TikTok demographic. So at the end of the day, It is. And I think to James's point, one of the things where there's always naturally a need to put yourself in the consumer's shoes when you're designing anything. But I think it is funny that advertising has never been famously good at doing that. Just look at new car advertising. The average age of a new car buyer in the UK is 52. And that was before the economy lit itself on fire. So I imagine it will probably be closer to 55 or 60 soon. Only granddad's going to be driving a new Buick at Christmas. And then the average age of an actor in any new car ad is about 30. And that's because the average age of someone who wrote the script for that new car ad is probably about 25. So at the end of the day, I think there is an interesting challenge, and this does touch on it both from a creative and a media side, that we don't always get bang on reflecting the reality of the people who consume and use the products we're selling. Show me a disinterested 55-year-old in a Toyota ad, and I'll go buy a car. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
Doesn't that ignore the fact that a lot of advertising is supposed to be aspirational? I'm sorry, is the rude 55-year-old supposed to be like, yes, I want to continue to be a rude 55-year-old like in my Toyota? Like,
are you saying 55-year-olds can't be aspirational?
I'm saying that their aspirations are probably not to just be exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like isn't part of the aspiration to like feel young again in the car? I don't know. I'm not a creative. I'm just a media planner. What do I know about it?
I like it. I think every new car ad should have a 55-year-old getting in the car and a 19-year-old getting out of the car, who then is hit with just a book holding all of their student debt. It'll be a fun twist at the end to get people to notice.
That's a really good. That ad would sell a lot of cars, Dubos. I would buy a car.
And cancel student debt, one would imagine. Thank you, Toyota. The check is in the mail.
Huge.
All right, I think we need to reposition Rival as a creative agency. I think we got some brilliant ideas cooking here. We'll see if Toyota is looking for a new partner. Yeah. All right, we're coming up on time. So we have
Jenna. I wonder who won.
Jenna, you now have less points than you did a second ago. You
have I knew that I wasn't points.
I bet you are fun to work with. I bet you are so much fun to work with.
He's vengeful like Batman.
Dubos, 23 points, and Batman, you have 27 points. So you've got 1 minute. Rant or rave, what do you want to share with us today?
Oh my God, I wasn't prepared to win. I didn't come on here assuming I was going to win. I haven't prepared a speech. Hang on a second. I guess the thing that I was going to talk about metaverse stuff again because it's still a load of bullshit and annoys me, but you said you had a metaverse swear jar, so I feel like you're on board with that. On the car thing, let's talk about car ads for a minute, right? Because they're all the same. And the only real one that stood out for me over the past few years, I would say, there was Mini Cooper did a Christmas ad. And as we all know, Christmas ads are like supermarkets, food, and that's kind of it. And occasional charities who just hit the nail on the head. But like, oh, it's a shopping mall. They've really, John Lewis ad every year nails it. But Mini made a Christmas ad, a car ad at Christmas. Like, you spent all of your money on your entire family and dinner and buying presents for everyone. You're not going to go out and buy a car. But they still did a whole ton of brand work because they put out a car ad at Christmas and it was good and it stood out because it was completely different to anything else that went before. So that's my little thing. You want to make car ads? Make them different. Done.
I think that's probably good advice for any industry, not just continuing to do the same thing over and over again. But a lot of it, I mean, to the point and where we started things with the Decentraland and Grey Goose conversation, a lot of it is driven by agencies, that's just kind of, it's a rinse and repeat type of thing. They think about things the same way. They go through the same processes. But to Jenna's point in that conversation, a lot of it's driven from the client side as well. And I think until the client side starts to change in terms of what they want to do, probably a lot of the advertising is going to look the same. All right. We are going to leave it there. James, thank you so much for joining us. Dubose, always a pleasure. Jenna, better luck next time.
Yeah,
and for everybody listening, I think next week we're gonna have to do an hour later because I'm on a flight. But we're live every Thursday, and please make sure that you subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and please do leave a review. Till next time, see you then. Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, Dubose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.